Alright, what's up everyone? We got my boy Cav in the chair today. He's going to be getting rid of his mullet, and we're going to be doing some tapers on the sides with like a middle part flow going towards the back. So I'm just sectioning off his hair from the crown to the recession of the hairline. This is going to separate the top from the sides. And I'm doing this on both sides to make sure that I can set my foundation efficiently on both sides. I'm going to just comb the top of his hair and then twist it around and put a clip through it just to keep it out of the way for me. And then with my number 3 guard, we're going to start debulking the back of his hair, getting rid of all of that mullet length. And I'm just curling or flicking. I'm just going to be coming off the shape of his head with the number 3 guard, using my comb to feed the hair into the clipper. And I'm just creating enough space to do a nice taper in the back while still keeping all that length. We're going to do the same thing with the side taper area. I'm just debulking it, flicking out so that I can keep enough length. And then we're going to come in with our clipper comb and begin debulking this with clipper over comb. I'm mostly just focusing on the area right above that number 3, just clearing some of that weight so it's not a heavy line there. I'm going to come in and refine the flow with the scissors and do diagonal cross graduation as well after the tapers are completed. But this is how my process usually goes. I'll just do the side tapers, line everything up. It's debulked enough to where I can connect it with the scissors afterwards, and then I'll come in and do all my scissor work after the sides are completed. And one tip for this is to pull the ear down and create enough space for you to get that comb in there. And I'm angling my comb slightly outwards. Same thing with this area, just connecting what's above the ears to the back of the head, keeping the comb pretty much parallel with the shape of his head. Now we're going to come in here with the JRL trimmers, and we're just going to debulk the taper area, the bald area. And I'm going high enough to where we can get a nice gradient, so I don't want it to look too low, but I still need to keep enough space for me to get that transition with the tapers. Now we're coming in with the 245 Babyliss clipper with the lever fully open, and then I'm going to close it all the way. Then I'm coming in with the 1.5 guard, flicking into the length of the number 3 that we initially set. Then we'll drop to the 1 guard and just go right below where we just left off with that 1.5 guard. And I'll open and close the lever as needed until I can get closer to that half length. Then we're going to come in with the lever open and just merge those two sections together. And this is just a rough draft. I'm going to come in and detail this afterwards, but I'm just going through my system first to get it looking decent. I feel like there's a balance that you have to find for yourself when you're doing fades, where it looks decent enough that you're not going to need twice as much of the service time just to detail the haircut, but you also don't want to over detail. Now we're coming in on the back taper and starting with the lever open, then closing it all the way and pushing up that bald line that we set with our trimmers. And I'm just opening the lever little by little until we get closer to that initial line that we put in with the lever all the way open. Same steps, we're coming in with the 1.5 guard, just kind of flicking into that number 3 that we set. I'm not trying to create a new line here. And you can see with the shape of his neck on the back taper, it's not a flat surface, so I'm having to use the corners a lot and angle my body position around whichever area of the neck I'm working on to make sure that everything looks blended, not just from the back view, but also looking at it from the sides. And we have the half guard, and we're just merging those two sections together You can notice too, he has a lot more hair on the back taper than he does on the side tapers. So I'm having to spread my guidelines out more in the back so that the gradients looks even with the sides. Typically, if there's less hair on the surface that you're working with, you're going to compress your guidelines because you don't want the fade to look too stretched out. But then in other areas like this, where there's way more hair, you're going to have to spread your guidelines out way more. Otherwise, your fades are going to look too compressed. So you can see I'm just using the corners of the clippers to detail and kind of merge those two sections together. And this is looking pretty decent to where we can now get a nice lineup on it and then detail afterwards. So you can see I already completed the taper on this side. And now I'm grabbing my blending scissors and I'm just gonna soften up the weight right above the side tapers. I didn't want to come in and take off too much length here because I knew I still had to go in with my scissors and create my sections and much of a line between. Now we got the 245 Babyliss trimmer and we're just going to line up around his ears. You could see some of that hair was still too long to where it was kind of flowing over the line, so I'm just going to detail that and clean it up with trimmer over comb. Now we're going to line up his vertical bars and then his hooks. He wanted to keep the front natural today. So we're just going to give him a little bit of definition on the sides so everything looks nice and framed. And I'm still getting used to recording my haircuts, so the lighting's a little bright here, but moving forward I'm going to darken up the videos a little bit so that it's not so blown out. But you can see since we're keeping a little bit longer lengths above the taper, I'm having to constantly comb it just to make sure that nothing's gonna move over the line that we're placing. A nice diagonal line that won't be too heavy or too short and soft. Determines how close to the head I'm going to keep this hair or how far I'm going to pull it. So in this case, since we were cutting off his entire mullet and going for a pretty drastic change, I didn't want to go too short on the sides here, and I still wanted him to get used to having a short back taper area and nape, but still having enough long hair that it doesn't feel like a completely different haircut. So now we're just doing diagonal sections, and I'm connecting that length that I chose at the top into what I clipper over combed just above the tapers earlier. So we're just connecting point to point right here. And I'm gonna follow this diagonally until I get to the back of the opposite ear. So we're gonna follow this to his left ear. And then when I come in on the left side and go the opposite direction, we're gonna follow it towards his right ear. And you can see my body position when I'm taking these sections. I'm not standing right behind the section. I'm standing off to the side so I can make sure that the angle of my fingers is correct for the shape that I'm trying to create. And I'm not over directing any of these sections. I'm just pulling them straight out from where they grow because I've already chosen the horizontal shape with my initial guideline at the top. So one last section towards that right side ear. And at this point, you're just kind of connecting whatever is a little bit uneven from your initial section on the opposite side. So now I'm just wetting the top. I unclipped it, and then I'm going to split this right down the middle. So I'll be able to work this top section in halves. And everything above the ear and backwards, I'm just going to connect to the length that I chose for the top of the sides. I'm going to follow that back, still pulling it to my chest. And how high or low I pull this hair section is going to determine how heavy or soft the top lays onto the sides. So you can see I'm going lower and further away from the head as I get closer towards the front, and that's going to keep enough length for him to get a nice middle part to where it doesn't look as short as the sides in the front area. Same thing on this side, straight to my chest, connecting to the hair at the top of the sides that we set with that guideline and following it towards the back. And then everything forwards of the ears is going to get pulled lower and further from the head. Now I'm going to take my first section from the top, and there's going to be a peak in the middle because I already cut the exterior shape of the top. Now I'm just layering in the interior shape. So I'm connecting point to point from left side to right side because that's the length that I chose when I initially pulled each half outwards. And notice how I didn't continue that towards the round part of the back of his head because I didn't want it to lay too soft. I still wanted it to be a nice square shape that'll have enough length to flare out towards the back. Now we're just putting in a little bit of Tomb 45 pomade to give him a nice shiny finish, something that'll look natural like he just got out of the shower. And do a loose styling, and we'll let this air dry from here. But yeah, check it out, guys. This is the finished result. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Appreciate everyone watching and supporting my journey. And thank you, Cav, for trusting me with cutting off your mullet as well.